Good morning. I would like to call to order the regular board meeting of Tuesday, February 11th, 2025. As is our custom, we begin our board meetings with the singing of our national anthem. We're very honored today to have a pre-recorded video of students from CBE Learn School singing O Canada. I would ask everyone to please stand and follow the lead of the students.
Hello, it's an honor to be here with you today.
Please rise for the singing of O Canada.
O Canada, our own red native land, true faith love in all of us command. With glowing hearts receive the rest, the true north strong and free. Alolan goyanchong O Canada, stand on guard for thee. God keep our land, glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
We are also very pleased today to have a video featuring students from CBE Learn School give the acknowledgement of the land.
Demonstrates our ongoing commitment to the original spirit and intent of Treaty 7, also known as the Blackfoot Treaty. This agreement is to share the land and live well together in peace for as long as the sun shines, the grass grows, and the river flows. This acknowledgement is an act of truth and reconciliation to honor the Indigenous peoples who have cared for their traditional territories since time immemorial, and leads us to consider our individual and collective roles and responsibilities to the treaty relationship. Oki, Dadanastida, Ambawasich. Tansei, Tanashe, Bonjour, and hello. The Calgary Board of Education acknowledges the traditional territories and oral practices of the Treaty 7 nations, including the Siksika Tsitsapi, comprised of the Siksika, the Gaina, the Bigani, and the Yamskapi Bigani nations. We acknowledge the Sutena Nation and the Ayarhe Lakota, comprised of the Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Goodstone nations, the Métis Nation within Alberta, and all people who make their homes in the Treaty 7 region of southern Alberta. This land on which we gather is traditionally known as Moginstis, Kusitse, Wintispa, and Otasquani. As a learning organization, we are committed to advancing truth and reconciliation calls to action, focused on education for reconciliation.
Trustee Close, as ward trustee for wards 11 and 13, would you like to say a few words of thanks?
Thank you, Chair Bolger, and actually through Director Weipart and Principal Klukas, please extend our heartwarm thanks and gratitude for such a wonderful rendition of O Canada and the land acknowledgement, and for actually already visually providing us with the continuum of what online learning looks like at CBE. So very thankful for opening our board meeting in this way.
Oki, Dadanastara, Ambawastich, Tansei, Tanishi. Bonjour, hello, and welcome to all of our staff and public in attendance at this meeting. Representing our stakeholder groups, I would like to recognize Helen Sharp from the Elementary School Principals Association and Teresa Martin from the Senior High School Principals Association. Our first item of business is to approve the agenda for today's meeting. Ms. Minor, do you have any changes that need to be noted?
Madam Chair, there were no agenda changes requests to be noted for today's meeting.
Could I have a motion that the agenda be approved as submitted? Thank you, Trustee Dennis. Those in favor of the motion? That is carried unanimously. Our next business deals with results focus. Today, we have a school presentation from CBE Learn. Director Weipert, would you please introduce the presentation?
Good morning, Chair Bolger, Chief Pittman, superintendents, trustees, and guests. CBE Learn is situated out of the Career and Technology Centre, but connected to the Area 5 family of schools. Has been serving CBE students for over 20 years. The demand to support learning at any time, any place within the constraints of localization and increased dramatically as the world shifted through in response to the COVID pandemic. Distance learning, in particular online learning, gained significant credibility and experienced rapid evolution with changing technology. Internet access has also evolved to support an anytime, anyplace connected world. CBE Learn quickly evolved as demand for access to distance learning skyrocketed, developing programming for multiple new grades and playing a supporting role in the CBE's response to learning continuing through difficult times. Many families made the choice to engage full-time in online learning and became part of the CBE learning community. CBE Learn has also played an instrumental role in the CBE's ability to respond to growth. Last year, schools experienced continued, unprecedented month-over-month enrollment growth across all divisions, with thousands of students entering schools after the end of September enrollment count. Alongside this growth, student complexity also continued to increase. It's my pleasure to introduce Steve Klukas, Principal for CBE Learn Home Education and Chinook Learning Services, to highlight many of the unique approaches and technologies leveraged by CBE Learn staff through synchronous and asynchronous delivery of a comprehensive education program, including complementary programming in elementary grades, career and technology foundations, and career and technology studies. Joined by Steve is also one of the assistant principals for the elementary online program, Dana Dumont, and I'd like to also welcome her. The academic success of all students is paramount in realizing the CBE mission that each student, in keeping with their individual abilities and gifts, will complete high school with a foundation of learning necessary to thrive in life, work, and continued learning. Steve, there you are. Please introduce the work of your amazing team and the media that you've pulled together. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken, and thank you for having us here this morning. As Ken just shared, CBE Learn is the Calgary Board of Education's online school and has been part of the system for over 20 years. We provide a full-time online learning program for students in Calgary in grades 1 through 12. As of September 30th, 2024, CBE Learn had a total of 1,130 full-time students, of whom the largest portion were 731 high school students. 249 junior high and 150 elementary students rounded out this number. Together with myself as the principal, an assistant principal provides leadership to each of the unique areas of our program. Enrollment figures can vary throughout each school year as CBE Learn supports students and families facing exceptional circumstances, including but not limited to medical needs, high-performance athletes, students requiring placement, or for various other reasons. Many of our CBE Learn students would be successful in other environments, but have chosen online education as the best fit for their own learning. Our students engage in live synchronous learning as well as asynchronous learning using Google Classroom and Brightspace by D2L. Especially at the high school level, CBE Learn offers various opportunities to complete individual courses and upgrading. This includes the opportunity for students from other CBE high schools to take concurrent courses at CBE Learn. Each semester, we support over 1,100 concurrent students in this way, providing flexibility and choice to our students and supporting the system as a whole by providing robust programming options to take the pressure off of our already very full high schools. Together with Chinook Learning Services in-person offering, CBE Learn is also a key partner and provides the online portion of the CBE's summer school program each July. In July of 2024, 6,273 students completed a CBE Learn summer school course online. This figure represented a 92% success rate in course completion, allowing students to complete valuable credits towards their high school diploma. Through concurrent enrollments and summer school, CBE Learn plays a valuable role in supporting our system and CBE's high schools. We're pleased to share with you today as we consider the second portion of the R2 Academic Success Monitoring Report. While there are many subjects and disciplinary areas included in this section of the report, the disciplinary area that we intend to focus on today is specifically that of complementary course offerings. And so we're excited to share that with you through a video presentation that's been prepared for you by the elementary, junior high, and senior high teams. I'd like to acknowledge the work of our staff in putting the presentation together. As you watch, I trust you'll see evidence of the board's priorities in academic success, including reflections of appropriately challenging tasks and higher order thinking, creativity, and others. Beyond those R2 specific priorities, you'll also see other key trustee operational expectations reflected, such as how CBE Learn's work supports students' health and well-being and self-expression, all aspects of OE2, or how we plan for and provide rigorous, relevant, and high-quality programming opportunities that consider the needs of students and choice for families, aspects of OE3. Please join me now as we enjoy a snapshot of how CBE Learn supports student learning and academic success through rigorous and engaging complementary course programming.
The grade 1 to 6 teaching team fosters relationships and meaningful learning, balancing screen time and off-screen tasks for students. Students from across Calgary come together as a community, mostly online, but also through in-person days and activities. Developing a sense of belonging in the online environment is key to student well-being and the success they achieve at CBE Learn. Upon this foundation, teachers prioritize academic language development and assessment practices to advance learning. An intentional school structure promotes active student engagement in all stages of learning. Let's look closer at student academic success using examples from art and music. To foster belonging and prepare students for a productive school day, students and their homeroom teacher first interact asynchronously. Excitement for learning is further primed in a warm welcome session. Teachers design live sessions to ensure students are seen and heard. In synchronous sessions, students build on prior experiences and learning tasks shared ahead of time. CBE Learn students learn to collaborate. Explicit instruction, support, and feedback help students meet language and discipline-specific goals. Such carefully planned discussions are a key strategy to achieving school-wide literacy and mathematics goals. In our highly interactive environment, students engage in professional-like adventures and cross-curricular projects. With cameras always on, students practice musical concepts through body percussion and movement. They improve in response to real-time feedback. Students share ideas about music and learn how to lead activities and co-create musical works. Teachers guide students to reflect on their academic growth and collaborative efforts. Students describe their learning process when they submit artifacts of learning. Students share when support at home helps them learn. They record themselves showing and explaining what they've learned. Parents often notice how preparing these videos helps their child practice and improve towards success criteria. Students are taught how to share helpful tips and encouragement in art and music galleries. Teachers provide timely and specific feedback, guiding student progress toward goals. Teachers design sessions so they can listen and observe carefully as students talk about and show what they know and can do. When additional support and further assessment is needed, the student is invited to an extra live session during what would otherwise be asynchronous learning time. Teachers carefully compare the rich body of evidence collected online to the achievement data they gather during in-person assessment days. Teachers craft opportunities for students to broaden and deepen intercultural understandings through art and music. In this example, students expressed their individuality and then contributed their works to a group masterpiece. We're proud of the rich online offerings in art and music at CBE Learn. We are also thrilled to offer the option of taking these subject areas in person for families who prefer a hybrid approach to school. Whether they take art and music online or in person, CBE Learn artists and musicians amaze us each and every day. We can't wait to see what students will achieve next.
The complementary programs at CBE Learn Junior High provide students with opportunities to explore their interests, strengths, and passions. These courses also serve as an introduction to courses students can pursue in greater depth during high school, helping them make informed choices about their future studies and career paths. The Junior High Complementary Program allows students to explore their interests as they transition between divisions, offering both art and Career and Technology Foundations courses. Art courses include drawing, painting, comics, animation, and digital art. CTF courses include foods, computer science, graphic design, 3D design, photography, and fashion studies. Our complementary program emphasizes developing practical skills, creative thinking, problem solving, and collaboration, all while supporting our school's emphasis on literacy. Through our SDP focus on intentional task design and the implementation of research-informed strategies, teachers create both synchronous and asynchronous tasks that encourage students to engage with each other and the content. Asynchronous strategies include clear instruction paired with professional and peer examples, plus instructional videos. Some synchronous strategies we utilize are live discussion and chat, interactive polls and activities, and online breakout rooms for collaboration. Additionally, we encourage assistive technology when needed, ensuring accessibility for all students. We are proud to share that our strategically designed tasks, which focus on incorporating high-impact strategies in an online learning environment, have successfully strengthened literacy skills while fostering critical thinking, problem-solving, and collaboration, leading to notable outcomes. Student engagement in complementary courses is strong. These experiences serve to broaden their conceptual and hands-on skills. This highlights how skills developed, such as critical thinking, communication, and creativity, directly support literacy and overall academic achievement. By fostering a well-rounded educational experience, our students not only excel in their complementary courses, but also see tangible benefits in their core learning. We observe close links to improved performance in core classes, as evidenced by the Grade 9 PAT scores. This aligns with our school development plan's focus on enhanced student outcomes through diverse learning opportunities, reinforcing the value of a holistic approach to education.
Students enroll in CBE Learn's high school program for various reasons. We celebrate and promote diversity through our welcoming, caring, respectful, and safe learning environment. According to the Our School and CBE Student Survey, our strengths include school connectedness and belonging, diversity, student safety, acceptance, and cultural values. To support this, we offer a wide range of complementary courses that help students discover their passions and explore various career pathways. Our focus on offering a wide range of complementary courses alongside our core programming aligns with our school development plan goal of increasing course completion across all disciplines. This strategy provides students with multiple avenues to achieve academic success through learning. CBE complementary courses such as computing science, communication technology, design studies, and information processing are also part of the Digital Futures Collegiate program. These courses offer an engaging and supportive learning environment that promotes student success through choice and personalization. Live sessions and one-on-one time with teachers allow for real-time interaction. A mix of text, videos, and interactive elements provide various ways for students to engage with the content, make real-world connections, and prepare for post-secondary opportunities.
Taking computer science with CBE Learn quite literally changed my life. It's been the best decision I've made in my early career so far. The course structure was able to accommodate my emerging passion in the field while also ensuring I was learning key computational theory. My teacher recommended me to multiple extracurricular activities I could engage in to build upon my interest, which included coding competitions, which have allowed me to build a very extensive personal portfolio and motivated me to start my early career.
Our leadership course encourages students to develop skills that will be essential for any future career path. A key element of the course is directly from the CBE Wellbeing Framework, prioritizing school connectedness and healthy relationships, including mentoring between students and other school-based staff. Our leadership students have created numerous opportunities for peer connectedness, including
Our leadership course has offered me the opportunity to collaborate with our fellow students on projects such as clubs, study sessions, and coffee with Cameron. These experiences have helped me develop valuable skills like confidence and contribute to our school community.
We have worked hard to find areas of success to facilitate transition between our junior and senior high complementary programs, ensuring a consistent and engaging educational experience for students. Our complementary courses enable students to explore their passions through immersive learning tasks. Supporting this work allows us to advance our school development goal of improving course completion rates.
So I personally find that because of the vast variety of available complementary courses, that seemingly all students are able to delve into their personal interests, whether it be a minor curiosity or a full-blown passion. Now, because of this, I'm able to continue choosing this nitpicking program as I continue to focus in on this one particular subject or topic which has piqued my interest. As this continues on, I can continue to further my knowledge of this until I can grow it into a full-blown successful career into my adult life.
Our high school offers flexibility in learning as a means to enhance academic success. Students can choose their study location and create their own daily schedules, allowing them to engage in coursework at times that best suit their own needs. Consistent course standards, such as similar digital layouts, clear grading practices, and diverse learning methods like text, audio, video, and images, as well as interactive elements, support this flexibility and help students focus on their learning.
I've always had a busy schedule, whether it be filled with extracurriculars or sports, and being in person did not allow me with the flexibility I needed to get everything done with time to spare. The ability to do my work when it is convenient for me has allowed me the time and flexibility to do other things.
My work that I turn in and time that I give to the lessons is much more detailed and thorough because I do it when I have the most time and energy for it. The flexibility also allows me to be accountable for my own time and has helped me develop crucial skills such as time management, self-discipline, self-directed learning, and responsibility, which are all critical in the real world.
Through today's exploration of complementary course programming at CBE Learn, our students experience tremendous academic success every day. Our focus on providing specific structures and, at the same time, flexible and varied opportunities enhances this success. As our staff works hard to implement strategic task design and provide diverse learning opportunities, CBE Learn students are engaged and motivated to achieve both at school and for the future, and a sense of well-being is supported. Ramiza, who you saw in the video today, is the recipient of the Distinguished Schulich Leadership Scholarship, Canada's most coveted STEM undergraduate scholarship, and is a wonderful example of how our students experience success and are making an impact on our city, on our country, and the world. Our diverse and flexible programming supports our students and the Calgary Board of Education's mission that each student, in keeping with their individual abilities and gifts, will complete high school with a foundation of learning necessary to thrive in life, work, and continued learning. From their first day in grade 1 until their graduation day, CBE Learn is very proud of the work that our students do and of their many accomplishments. We trust that you feel the same way, and we thank you for the opportunity for us to share some examples of these successes with you today.
Well, thank you, and I'll now call on Trustee Close to say a few words of thanks.
And delighted to do so. I think over the past few years, I have not been able to attend the graduation in person, and so it'll be exciting to be able to do that this year. And let me start here. I think every question that we might have had about what online learning looks like was answered this morning, and especially appreciated that it was done through the lens of complementary courses, because I think that's where your brain goes first. How do you do complementary courses online? How do you do art online? But you also covered the basis of, how they connect with one another, and even that shared responsibility. So as a program of choice, but also a program of opportunity. So I was really quite taken with how responsive, how adaptable, how flexible, and the evidence of academic success. So not only is CBE Learn meeting the needs of students within our school system, it's meeting the academic needs of students that need this opportunity. And so thank you very much for doing the presentation today and providing us with a picture of what CBE Learn looks like. And oh my goodness, the reference to Razima and the scholarship award, huge congratulations to her and to your whole team. So thank you.
Thank you. We'll now take a 5-minute recess. Next on our agenda is item 5.1, the annual monitoring of Operational Expectations 3 instructional program. Chief Superintendent Pittman, would you please introduce the report?
Good morning, Chair Bolger and trustees. As mentioned, we're presenting the Operational Expectation 3 Instructional Program Monitoring Report, and the data collected applies to the 2023-2024 school year. I'm pleased to report that the Calgary Board of Education has continued to provide high-quality programming for all students, as you saw just referenced in our earlier presentation. This is thanks to the ongoing efforts of teachers, principals, school staffs, service units, and administration, as is reflected in the breadth of the report. As demonstrated in the evidence presented, the CBE continues to provide students with a wide range of learning opportunities that reflect both programmatic options, the diversity and strength of our learning communities. The evidence presented today indicates compliance with each of the 11 indicators, and I'll now ask our Superintendents of School Improvement to provide further highlights and context for the report.
Thank you, Chief Superintendent Pittman, Chair Bolger, and trustees. Each year, schools within the Calgary Board of Education complete a school development plan designed to enhance learning outcomes for all students. Schools analyze data from previous years to identify their students' learning needs and take into consideration the professional learning, structures, and processes and resources required to address those needs. They then create a plan that outlines specific goals, instructional strategies, and measures to meet the unique needs of their students. These plans are regularly reviewed by education directors and revisited throughout the year during school visits, allowing for ongoing assessment and feedback to foster continuous improvement. Some overarching themes identified in our analysis of SDPs as presented in the report for 2023-2024 include literacy goals focused on reading with an emphasis on decoding and phonemic awareness, mathematic goals targeting number sense, conceptual understanding, procedural fluence, and mathematical representation and communication, and well-being goals that work to address school connectedness and belonging, regulation, resilience, and mental health. These findings reflect continual growth towards greater alignment across the system and foundational practices. This level of coherence is achieved in part through CBE enduring frameworks in mathematics, literacy, well-being, and the Indigenous Holistic Lifelong Learning Framework, all of which are aimed to continually improving student outcomes. This report also reaffirms the Calgary Board of Education's commitment to providing diverse learning opportunities as students grow and develop. During the 2023-2024 school year, 175 different career and technology foundation courses were offered across 68 CBE student schooling sites, serving nearly 35,000 middle and junior high age students. And for our career and technology studies, there were a total of 750 CTS courses offered to over 25,000 senior high students across 31 different sites. And while the same courses are not offered at every school, the CB consistently ensured that both choice and exploration opportunities were available across the system as a collective. Lastly, our CBE Unique Pathways program served 572 students through centrally organized dual credit and exploratory programs. This is an increase of 59 students from 2022 to 23 school year. Trustees, at this time, we welcome your questions.
Thank you. The operational expectations policies define the degree of authority transferred to the Chief Superintendent as she makes day-to-day decisions. The Board of Trustees has previously reviewed the reasonable interpretation of this operational expectation and approved that the Chief Superintendent reasonably understands the values underlying this policy and that the indicators previously provided by the Chief Superintendent are acceptable to the Board. I now invite any trustee who has questions about the report to offer them to the Chief Superintendent. Let me remind the Board that the purpose of considering this report is to satisfy the Board that its policy values were complied with during the 2023-24 school year. I encourage trustees to limit their questions and comments in support of monitoring. Trustee Close.
Although you referenced this in your opening comments, I'm still going to ask because I very much appreciated this year's report with the detailed summary information of specific instructional strategies necessary to address student results. And so wondering if you could provide further information on how you are seeing the framework support that analysis of the student results measures, or if there's also the level of analysis from the education plan. So when I think about CBE using instructional strategies to address student results, what should I be thinking?
Through the chair. So you're correct, we mentioned it in the opening remarks. The CB frameworks set our direction on which instructional strategies have the greatest impact on student achievement and well-being. And I'm not going to rename the frameworks. They establish a baseline of instruction and structures and process across the organization. So in regards to your specific question, I would, the simplest way to share it would be that we see direct alignment with the frameworks, we see direct alignment with the education plan to the school development plans, and we do see our schools seeing the school development, I'd say more over the last few years, of actually being flexible and adaptive, and with those ongoing conversations with our education directors through their school visits, we can see how they move to support the needs of the students and as the student population may change at a given school.
Trustee Dennis?
Thank you, Chair. So my first question is related to 3.1, which says, plan for and provide rigorous, relevant, and high-quality programming opportunities that consider the educational needs of students, the choices of students and families, and the long-term fiscal and operational capacity of the organization. There could be a ton to unpack with that. That expectation is high, and I see, that we're saying we're compliant with that. So I'm just looking for just some examples of some of the actions that would have been taken by the system in order to be in compliance with this indicator.
Through the chair, there certainly is a great deal to review in that context. And I'm going to start with the broader high-level statement that actually stems from the earlier response by Superintendent Nelson. Coherence matters. Alignment matters, and alignment is not about prohibiting critical autonomy within our schools. What it is, though, is setting a baseline of how all system resources ensure equitable quality practice exists across each of our schools in a way that is responsive to the data of the students within that school and reflective of the needs, experiences, and careers of the staff within the school. So that at a high level is where I would start with indicator 3.1. I would then move to the more targeted response, which is our set program evaluation framework, which is a very formalized structure that addresses economy, efficiency, and effectiveness. And while those are often words that we see applied in other settings, they apply in an education setting and are appropriate in understanding the collective investment. And within that, what we look at to make a decision of where we apply the formal framework is understanding where we see students or changes in student population or demographics. And so I'll use an example, though this is not an active program evaluation, but as we see 44,000 students with English as an additional language, we take the same concept and ask ourselves, how are we reflective of how are we responding to the additional needs through our professional learning? And you've heard through other board meetings different responses regarding the supports provided for staff, the ways in which we adjust partnerships, and those types of things. We also look at identified areas of educational need through our student data, and you see that reflected in the AERR. We also address changes in pedagogical research and practice. An example of that is the direct and immediate shift made in early literacy learning over 3 years ago, where we made a distinct change in that practice. And then finally, also looking at information on student outcomes or changes to cost or available resources. Some of those are reflective of changes to key partnerships. They may be a reflection of provincial funding and a need to reprioritize. And so that framework really does set administration out, both formally and informally, around an aligned structure to understand and be confident in reporting back to the board that we are meeting the values of high quality, effective educational programming in a manner that reflects our student needs and our resources. Lengthier response, and I know I started off at a high level, but broadly speaking, you did open the door with a very intensive indicator.
Trustee Vukadinovich?
delving deeper into 3.1, so indicator 3.1.4 states that area learning team referrals demonstrate principals access system-wide supports and services to support student achievement and wellness. So in support of demonstrating compliance with this indicator that principals are accessing system-wide supports, page 11 of 19 states, a review of area learning team referrals confirms that in the 2023-24 school year, 100% of CBE principals accessed supports and services from the ALT process. This resulted in 6,078 referrals across all 7 areas. And it also mentions that the most requested ALT support through the SLT process resulted in 1,051 requests for specialized class placement. So that was a little over 1,000 for specialized class placement. And the second most requested were 940 requests for psychoeducational consultations and assessments. So a few questions around that area. Did all 940 students referred by the principals receive psychoeducational consultations and assessments? And of those 940, where were they referred? Were they referred to a specialized class placement or other supports? And then going back to that other number, the 1,051, and I noticed that they're both quite similar. One's just under 1,000, the other one's just over 1,000. So of the 1,051 requests for specialized class placement, what's the overlap with that number and the psychoeducational assessments number, request number? And just wondering basically to what extent there is a connection between these two numbers.
Through the chair. The 940 referrals to ALT for psychoeducation consultation and assessment, what I can confirm is that 100% received a consultation. There is a variety of things that could occur as a result of that consultation, but certainly 100% of them within that current year would have received a consultation from a psychologist. What we understand through the volume is that at times we can have referrals happen over the course of the whole year. So part of that 940 are referrals that are coming in at the end of June. And so those referrals that came in at the end of the year would have been prioritized in August, and those students would have been seen at the start of the following year. In terms of the 1,051, and so in terms of that, not all of these referrals resulted in placement. We know that we have a variety of different specialized programs. Intake, again, occurs on a continuous enrollment process over the course of the year, and that these students either would have received a placement, they may have received a consultation to better support them in the community school that they currently attend. There may have been additional supports that were required that could be available in their school, and or there could be other additional services that were identified that would have been able to better meet the student's need at that time. In terms of the relationship, all students who receive a placement in a specialized program would have either a psychoeducation assessment completed or a medical diagnosis that identified that additional supports and services at a very high individualized level was needed. That is not to say that all 940 referrals are a direct connection to the 1,051 specialized assessment processes. There's a number of reasons that you would have a psychoeducation assessment. Placement is only one of those reasons. The ultimate goal of an assessment is to have a better intervention opportunity for a student in the least restrictive environment as to the best of our ability. Thank you.
Through the chair, I would just add that I believe 4 years ago, that type of detailed response and the level of data you have within OE3 would not have been reflected. And so one of the things that I want to highlight is the commitment alongside that other piece to ensure that we have consistency of data collection across all of our areas, consistency of understanding of our placement processes at the highest level centrally so that we understand those trends and can ensure that we are able to identify where it is we are unable to respond or where it is we need to enhance responses or shift our processes. So when this board first started, This level of detail was not present. And it is a reflection of the values you have continued to communicate as to also alongside the program evaluation framework that we have continued to move that work forward to be as responsive as possible around the manner in which we're responding and allocating resources.
Trustee Hack?
Just following up on that same thought process. So I'm looking at the referral number, and I'm seeing within that explanation that school-based mental health referrals transitioned from the ALT process to centralized support. Knowing that we had an education plan come in May of last year, in what aspect did that inform it became centralized? And what impact has this had by making it a centralized process? What impact has it had on referral numbers? And then I'll leave it at that for a possible follow-up.
Through the chair. And so you're correct that there were a centralized process for school-based mental health services that came into effect in September of 2023. And so what that allowed was more of a streamlined access to and a timely access to mental health services. Referral processes are reviewed each week, and there was an identification through careful monitoring of those referrals that a timely within hours or day response was needed. And so as a result, a centralized intake process was implemented. The impact of that is that there is more direct and timely access to mental health services in the Calgary Board, and that the feedback that we have received in an ongoing basis is that is been a better support for students and more timely access for staff. And so that is was a recognized enhancement to that process. I see a follow-up.
Follow-up, Trustee Hack.
That's fabulous to hear that within hours or days that this is being acted upon. I know that, especially for mental health, it makes a huge difference to those students and families. So the process for centralized support, is that, like, not through the ALT process, is that something that will likely then continue, or do we have enough information at this point to know if it's going to come through centralized or through the ALT process?
Thank you. And so we are receiving significant positive feedback from all of the areas around the shift in referral process for school-based mental health. At this time, there are no plans to change that, but we continue to monitor in aligned with our principles of economy, efficiency, and effectiveness.
Trustee Dennis?
Thank you, Chair. So I found there's some information here I found quite compelling on pages 4 and 5 of 19, and in particular about the school development plan process shifting to provide choice and flexibility to either adopt a holistic or individual goals structure. So I found that quite interesting. And on page 5 of 9, it says that regardless of which template was chosen, instructional actions and strategies were similar, as each school addressed literacy, mathematics, and well-being. And so considering that, and I'm just wondering about, sort of the transformative potential in developing school development plans and their responsiveness to the students and improving their academic success. Just wondering what the potential is of shifting to this flexible approach. And I know it's new, but I'm a little bit curious about what you see that looks like moving forward and the impact that it had this monitoring year. And you also mentioned that you had examined 25 schools, and out of those 25 schools, similar strategies were adopted. But I was wondering if there were any common characteristics that saw a school choose one approach over the other.
Through the chair. So you're correct. This approach allowed staff and students to work and kind of create an SDP that was very authentic and related to their school. In the specifics, so of the 25 we examined, 17 chose the holistic model and 8 chose the individual goal structure. We would, from our analysis, the schools that chose the individual goal structure continue to focus specifically on literacy, mathematics, and well-being. And many of those chose this because it continued on the work of the 2 previous years, and the structure would have suited the context of their school. Schools that chose the holistic goal structure often identified high impact strategies that would address improvement in all 3 areas. So that would allow them for a singular focus of work at the school level. Often an example, concrete example, or high schools might have been focused on outcome-based assessment, for example, and then that encompassed the other areas of the education plan and their school development plan. It is important to note that the report and the model shared are based on the SDPs which were created in the context of the previous 3-year education plan, and so the school development template that was used this past fall changed slightly to better align with our new educational plan goals, specifically learning excellence, well-being, truth, reconciliation, diversity, and inclusion. And the most recent templates builds on the success of the 2023-2024 school development models and continues to provide some aspects of flexibility and choice with continuous improvement at the central part of that work. And of course, it's also designed to improve the readability for our parents. That sometimes was a little bit of the difficulty in the holistic, that it became quite large. So we have focused on a template that is very similar on that piece.
Trustee Vukadinovich? Do you want to follow up, Trustee Dennis?
Sure. I just appreciate the comment made about improved readability. I think that's really important. Even doing this job for 8 years, I find myself trapped in some education ease, and parents aren't always as familiar with it, so I appreciate that increased readability comment a lot.
Go ahead, Trustee Vukadinovich.
Moving to transportation, if I may. So indicator 3.4.3 states transportation services provided by the CBE balance the cost of providing the service with the grants received from the province and the revenue generated through fees. And in support of demonstrating compliance with indicator 3.4.3, pages 18 and 19 of this 19-page report make reference to the implementation date for new, shorter travel distances. Remind me, please, since this report doesn't delve into them, what are these new, shorter travel distances, and have they been established by the CBE or by the Government of Alberta?
Through the chair. So the distances have been established by the province. Previously, those distances established within legislation was 2.4 kilometers for K through to 12. And in addition to that, the distance was to be measured using the shortest walking distance, so including roadways, pathways, all public rights of ways. So that is the model that we're currently under. Effective the new school year, the 25-26 school year, the new distances and the new way of measuring the distance must be utilized by all school jurisdictions, and what the province has legislated for those distances, it is 1.6 kilometers for kindergarten through to grade 6, and it is 2 kilometers for grade 7s through to grade 12. With that distance now, and this is a very important change, the walk distance must be now measured using a driving distance. So this is the distance that will be used to determine eligibility for transportation under the provincial legislation.
Trustee Close.
Just to follow up on the same indicator 3.4.3 on page 5-18 or page 18 of 19, When it says transportation services provided by CBE balance the cost of providing transportation with the provincial grants, how does CBE balance the cost of services with the provincial grants when it comes to specialized transportation?
Through the chair. So a short question, but I think it requires a little bit more unpacking. And so as I touched on in the previous response, the Education Act requires the CBE to provide transportation to students attending their designated regular program school, as well, of course, as students with special transportation needs. So we start off with that mandate. The student transportation regulations, again created by the province, subsequently establish additional parameters that school boards must adhere to when providing that mandated level of service. And so this is where the distances and how those distances are measured, as per my previous response, come into play. And then additionally, the Education Act also provides flexibility to school jurisdictions in the ability to essentially provide for transportation for alternative programs and for the provision of alternative programs, generally speaking, so long as the board has sufficient resources to offer those services. And then finally, as another aspect to consider, is that the transportation grant that is provided to school jurisdictions by the government for metro boards is based on an estimate of riders, not on an actual count. And so the province looks at the total enrollment, student population enrollment, and then from that comes to an estimate as to how many riders would potentially be eligible for transportation, both specialized as well as attending the regular program. And so from there, it is up to each school board to provide transportation, so long as we're reading the legislated parameters, but it's up to each school jurisdiction to look at what the values of the communities they serve are, and then see what is possible in terms of providing student transportation. And so, again, first we start with meeting those legislated requirements, and then with the remaining funds and fee revenue, we look at what then is possible beyond that, and that is specific to alternative programming, recognizing that, of course, in addition to the provincially provided grant, we also have the ability to request a fee for those students that wish to take transportation to help overall balance the budget, and in so doing, are able to provide those services to the mandated students as well as to those who are within that flexibility that we're provided by the government.
Trustee May.
Thank you. On the same indicator, this might be more budget related, but I'm wondering, are we considering to offer the alternative address service next year?
Through the chair, yes.
That was quick. Trustee Vukadinovich.
Thank you. I want to just circle back to what I heard in Superintendent Breton's previous answer, so not the one that was yes, but the longer one that came before that. I have no questions about the yes. So I just want to really try to understand this. So really try to understand, if I'm hearing this correctly, to me it sounds like there's a difference in the way the provincial government calculates the provincial transportation grant for public school boards versus for other taxpayer-funded school authorities. So from how I understand it, public school boards receive less than other taxpayer-funded school authorities because, from what I heard, public school boards are only allowed to treat a student's regular school as the student's designated school, even though each student is designated to a number of school choices at the Calgary Board of Education, including their excellent regular local school, as well as their designated language schools, their designated TLC school, their designated Montessori school, etc. And so my understanding is that as a result of this, that we're only allowed to treat some of our students as eligible for the transportation grant as opposed to other school authorities that can consider 100% of their students as potentially eligible. Our transportation grant is impacted. So a few questions I have about that is, what is the relevant legislation, or is it a page in the funding manual that I should be looking at to trace this different funding levels for public versus other school authorities? And is it true that our school board does have to treat transportation to a student's designated regular school differently from how we treat transportation to their other designated school? And is there is there basically less funding? Are we receiving less funding because we offer programs of choice?
Through the chair. Maybe I'll start off with, there is no mandate from the government to treat students differently. Again, the transportation grant is provided to the school jurisdiction, and then it is up to the school jurisdiction to determine how to best provide that service. Now, that being said, what is mandated is that there's a certain minimum level, certain parameters that must be met for certain students. And so therein lies the mandated student difference that we currently have in terms of the service levels we offer versus those service levels that we offer to students attending alternative program schools. And so what I'm referring to then again is those distances and how those distances are measured. And the fact that, for example, for students attending a specialized or that requires specialized transportation, that we are not to charge those students fees for transportation. Those are parameters that we have to live within. Within that context, then we decide, the school jurisdiction decides how we can best provide the service. And so we have a model that meets the legislated requirements for those mandated students. And then with the funding that is provided and the funding that is raised through fee generation or fee revenue, we have been able to also provide transportation services to students attending alternative programs, but not to the same level. And that's where the differentiation, it is a choice made by the school jurisdiction to provide transportation to those programs based on the value that we have for those and what we've heard from the communities that we serve. So the Education Act provides those parameters for our mandated students. The student transportation regulations establish some additional parameters in terms of the distances and how to measure it for the mandated students. Transportation grant is based on an estimate of total numbers of students that would be riding, not on actual numbers. So if every student in this system would suddenly be in an alternative program school, if every one of these schools, every CBE school is an alternative program school, we would still receive the same grant amount because they're predicating it on an estimate of how many could conceivably be attending their regular program designated school. And then it is in the funding manual for school authorities where we'll actually break down, we'll see the breakdown of the formula. And so that was part of your question in terms of public funded school jurisdictions. There is a section that speaks specifically to rural transportation grants. And within that, charters are mentioned. Urban transportation grant, the Metro Urban Transportation Grant, of course, that's where the bulk of our students, and that is where the bulk of our grant is tied to, and then the Specialized Transportation Grant, which of course we also receive a portion of. So I think I might have covered all your questions there. I hope I have.
Trustees, any other comments or questions on the report? Trustee Vukadinovich?
Yeah, it's always a tug and pull between obscurity and illumination on this issue. I always struggle with fully understanding it. Another question I have along transportation is indicator 3.4.1 states that 100% of school bus stops and zones follow the Alberta Education Route Assessment criteria. And in support of demonstrating compliance with indicator 3.4.1, page 18 of 19 states, CBE received an Alberta Education Route Assessment for each route, and all concerns were addressed by October 31st, 2023. So to help me understand this, what are the Alberta Education Route Assessment criteria, and who provides this AERA for each route that CBE received?
Through the chair, if I can, I'll answer them in the reverse order that they were asked. So it is the bus driver for that route that fills out and completes this submission of the Alberta Education Route Assessment. That document has 9 fields, 9 areas that they can observe, they're asked to observe and comment on. And those 9 fields are sight lines and visibility. And so here we're looking for a stop that, for example, might be on a hill or on a curve, might have a physical barrier, something that might create an impediment and could create a safety hazard. Second is primary and or secondary highway stops. And so if we're on a major route with high traffic volume, again, poor visibility, maybe frequent red light infractions based on information that we get from the city, those are areas that we'd be concerned about. Third, safe loading and unloading at the school. So looking for like a really crowded stop or maybe inadequate space for the bus to actually pull over and perform that activity. They're looking at turnarounds. So here again, this speaks to poor visibility for oncoming traffic, obstacles, driveway widths, the grade and winter snow removal. Looking at roadway crossings. So if they're nearby, there might be a controlled or uncontrolled intersection, merge lane, railroads, etc. Road structure, width or height. Here we're looking for a poorly maintained road, one that has an uneven road surface, sharp shoulders, very narrow. 7 is non-weather related variables, such as lots of wildlife in that area. Potentially that might be of interest and a potential safety concern. Then there is a weather-related variable such as presence of fog in that area, drifting snow that often accumulates in that area, so those kinds of weather observations. And then there's a field, the 9th field, for an open one for any other safety concerns that the driver might observe, not feel as if it falls within one of those categories.
Trustee Hack?
Follow up on the 3.4.1. So it says that 29% of the 246 runs required follow-up. Does seem high. I understand that, hearing the qualifications of the two, fog or animals or anything else. I'm wondering, how has this influenced transportation route planning on a go-forward basis? There is a potential for staff overturn, bus drivers, etc., or planning routes. How are we documenting these to ensure that this isn't something that happens again in the future years?
Through the chair, before getting to the question, I'll just add a little bit more context. And almost 75% of the reports actually speak to weather conditions. So the roads were slippery or something like that on the day, and ultimately did not result in a need for any change. And this is a general pattern that we see. We also see that about 10% of those total 246 submissions were for something that was not safety related, and so I think specifically of the timing of the run. And so the driver realizes that they can't hit all of the stops that we thought they could, and so that is what they're observing. And then 9% are actually safety-related concerns, and this might be something along the lines of missing bus zone signs in the area that they're stopping, or the bus stop is occurring at the same time as another board's bus stop, or maybe a Calgary transit route, and so there's a conflict. So those are the areas that certainly we're looking at most closely. How is this captured? Of course, all of these records are compiled. They're kept with the CB transportation team. And then as part of our ongoing work, we review what is going on. And so, for example, when we look at bus times, we have come to a realization that there is a need to start, based on the growth of the city, adjust our runs to reflect slower traffic conditions. And so there's a recognition of what is occurring in the city, and then there are pursuant modifications happening as a result. And the team then, of course, takes that into consideration to say, maybe these times that we have been anticipating, projecting, planning for need to be reviewed. From a safety perspective, those missing bus signs or bus stops, there is work that happens on an ongoing basis to coordinate with other school jurisdictions, and one of those, of course, one of those forums is the SAFE Student Travel Advisory Group. And so that is how that information is brought in and ultimately helps influence the work that goes forward.
Thank you. Trustee May.
Thank you. My question's on the same thread. And I'm wondering about how this assessment, and if this assessment ties into the creation of bus stops or routes in new and emerging communities. And so as our city continues to grow, I think we're still seeing new communities being built. And I've been hearing that from certain communities that they don't have a stop in their community, because I always say it's because of safety, and but I'd like to know is that what other factors are considered into creating a bus stop in a new and emerging community?
Through the chair. So the decision on placing a bus stop within a new and developing community, we're looking for three main elements. So the first one is we're looking for a safe path for the bus to get to that area. It needs to be clear of obstructions, and here I'm thinking of things like construction supplies, construction equipment, all of the construction workers' vehicles that are parked all along the roads. And thirdly, the road has to have been turned over to the city and be maintained by the city. And so that way we're not having to deal with instances where the snow and or other situations might be creating an issue. And then as part of that, when I talk about the safe path, maybe I should have just added that, of course, we're looking for the ability for this yellow bus to be able to enter, go through to the stop, and then ultimately be able to exit that location without having to, at any time, back up.
Trustee Dennis.
Thank you. Since we're on a transportation thread, I can wait with my question if anyone else has any other transportation questions they want to ask.
Trustee Hack, go ahead.
It's on transportation, but it's 3.4.2 in relation to penalties. So I'm just wondering how many penalties have been issued for non-compliance with the transportation agreements. I know that CBE has multiple providers, and I'm just wondering, so if we've applied any penalties, has it been to one, a few, majority of our transportation agreements? And how does this impact, so applying these, how does this actually impact service reliability for families?
Through the chair. So there are two types of penalties identified within the contracts. And the first type is a financial penalty when we are seeing significant delays, so beyond the 60 minutes tardiness, and that's an immediate financial repercussion. And then the other type of penalty is based a little bit like your driver's license points system, if you want. And so there are things that a service provider can do that gives them positive points. If, for example, the reliability over the course of a month is 99.5% on time, and there are things that will take away from those points, that those are negative points, and those of course are cases where they're not on time, but within the 60 minutes, and or they're related to collisions, delays in communicating delays to parents and to the CBE. Those are the kinds of areas where they will lose points. So all of our providers have received some form of penalty at some point in time. Of course, the larger carriers attract a lot more, and the larger carriers are typically impacted a lot more by the driver shortage than our smaller, more specialized transportation providers are. And so that also makes for a big difference in terms of those larger providers attracting a lot more of those penalties. In total, during the 23-24 school year, there were 359 non-performance adjustments. So those are the financial impacts immediate because of those significant delays. But there were also, in addition to that, 364 negative performance points issued for not being on time, and 152 negative performance points issued for those collisions, delays, and communications. Where the points factor in is that ultimately those points might result in a school or a school bus provider losing routes. And so those routes will be reassigned to the service provider that is demonstrating that they're able to continuously provide the service within the conditions that are laid out within the contract.
Thank you. Trustee Dennis?
Thank you, Chair. I would echo comments made by Trustee Close earlier today about appreciating the additional information that's contained in the report. Found that to be really helpful. In particular, I have a few questions, and if the Chair would indulge me, I'll just maybe throw them all out to you at the same time. On 3.1.3, really appreciated the information here because it does not only enhances the evidence provided to the board, but it also really showcases the incredible amount of choice that is offered by the Calgary Board of Education in service of our students. A couple of things for our middle junior students, I'm curious about, and those are some big numbers that were shared, and appreciated Superintendent Nelson's highlighting those in his opening remarks. For our middle junior students, I'm curious about what percentage of students are accessing the CTF courses. Similar question to our high school students around CTS. And I understand that we don't necessarily have a marketing budget at the CBE, but I'm curious about how do we create awareness amongst our families that these choices exist. And my next couple of questions are really around, just because of the incredible enrollment growth that we've experienced, and interest in courses such as these, the sometimes intense resource allocation that's required in order to be able to offer these courses. So the marketing piece, how do we create awareness? The other piece is just our capacity, right? So are these courses operating at capacity right now? And should we see demand exceeding capacity, are there any barriers that we might need to address in order to welcome more students into these programs? Lots of questions. I can repeat any of them if you want, but I hope you got them.
Through the chair, I'll start, and please ask for follow-up. I believe the first question was around middle school and CTF courses. So all of our middle school students have access to CTF programming. For some students, it may be specific courses, and there may be a few students that it's more embedded within their core programming, but all middle school students would have had access to CTF. In regards to all high school students have access to CTS programming at their local high school, or as you learned today, concurrently through CBE Learn or an online school. I believe the third question was, how would families or students have an awareness of those opportunities, whether middle or high school? So some of the general ways that would have awareness is open house events through tours, so elementary school students touring their middle school or middle school touring their high school, through school CBE websites, high school information, social media. I'll give you a concrete example. I have, my youngest is going from grade 9 to grade 10, and when we picked out his courses, he was interested in some courses that I wasn't actually fully aware of. So we went to his high school website and we checked out the CTS, and it was highlighted there. So sometimes just picking your child's courses kind of highlights various opportunities you might not know they have. I believe the fourth question was really about our capacity in light of the increased population. So I think your question was something to the effect of, are these classes full? And I would say the simplest answer is yes. The vast majority of these classes are full, but it's also important to clarify that we can have a computer class with 32, 33 students, but if you have a welding class or a carpentry class, we call often in middle school we say foods or construction, there is a limit to how many students we can put in those spaces or any given class due to safety. And I think you'd be fully aware of that. And then other things that we should be considering and barriers, well, we do have a barrier on space. We do also have a barrier, especially in some of our trades-based classes in high school, in staff. Teachers that have that skill set and that actually can teach those classes. As I shared, so that's a kind of a double whammy, that you could potentially not have, you fill all the sections, or you may only have one teacher, so you might still have one section that you could fill, but you would have to have another teacher to do it. But overarching, as the Chief Superintendent has shared numerous times, those classes are very much at capacity. And then the other piece that impacts our system is there is a significant cost. We are always grateful when we have a new school built and it has those amazing facilities and they're top-notch, modern. However, to keep those facilities to industry standard costs money. You have hundreds of students using the materials, so you have to replace whether the materials, consumable materials, or you have to replace the tools and machines in those spaces ongoing, just like you would have to do with any types of mechanics. So I hope that helps.
Follow-up, Trustee Dennis?
A little bit of a follow-up, I guess. No, and thank you for that. I think what I'm hearing is that there's access available. So there's access available, but maybe for some of our classes we do also have to, limit the number of students that are in there for a number of different reasons, and also maybe limit the number of blocks that it's available based on, the educator that's in the building that offers that program. So I'm just wondering a bit about, even just recruiting educators with the expertise to be able to teach these programs. How much of a challenge is that?
So our human resource team does an excellent job at recruiting educators in these areas. One of the challenges, though, is we are supported by Alberta Education, and there is a Bridge to Education program, but that Bridge to Education program is at U of A, so which isn't always ideal for people in Southern Alberta or Calgary. So we really appreciate that program, but it does sometimes impact, and there is a limit in people that have that skill set. Pass to the Chief.
Through the chair, I really appreciate the review of where we have barriers. So I think one of the things that I would put forward is, one, we have incredible student interest and we promote it. to have a broad range of experiences in skilled trades, in unique pathways, in dual credit programming, and that starts actually in middle school. So I've, over the last number of months, been on a middle school tour, going to middle schools across our city in a very focused manner, really looking at the range of pressures, because we know that choice comes earlier than in high school. And so this is a challenge. It's also an opportunity for our community. We know the priority that relates to the economy. We know the priorities related to industry, and we know that there are opportunities in this area, and it's one in which we have to create a, not just one-off individual partnerships, small things, but a systemic response. And this remains a commitment of the CBE in alignment with Alberta Education's priorities, also heard from various other ministers. And one where, in speaking with industry leaders across the city, there is great interest. And so as we continue to look at both teacher expertise, availability of space, availability of resources for those supplies, we know that our students will benefit from that increased choice, and they'll make choices that meet the needs of the future.
Trustee May.
Thank you. My question, I think, ties into this a little bit, also ties into some of the program evaluation. And so I'm wondering, with not a formal program evaluation, but kind of what's more offered at individual class offerings. So I'll hear from people that sometimes a specialized program is offered one year and then not the other year, or the current change for incoming grade 10 is not able to challenge the languages courses. So I'm just kind of wondering, how are these made and how do we communicate kind of these smaller changes?
Through the chair. So for your example with specialized class or system programs, those spaces are always evaluated through a continuous monitoring process. And so we're always taking a look at the number of individual students who are requesting or needing access to those kinds of services, ensuring that we have the number of spaces. I can provide a concrete example that at times we may have a larger cohort of students in the middle school environment, and they move on to the high school environment, and a smaller group of students comes in. And so as a result, we would see a reduction perhaps in the number of classes or spaces that are offered in that middle school environment. As the larger cohort moves on, we need to be ensuring that there's a continuity of programming and that they continue to provide, have access to those kinds of spaces and supports in the high school environment. And so it's through a process of continually monitoring what are the students selecting, what are their needs, what are those areas of interest, what is our capacity and our space abilities to be able to meet that need, and then making those adjustments to ensure that we have those supports and spaces available to the students and the requests that they're making. Thank you.
Trustees, any additional comments or questions on the report? We now come to the point where trustees are asked to identify their intentions to bring forward any motions related to compliance with this operational expectation. Any trustees who wish to bring forward a motion regarding exception to finding the evidence to be compliant, or a motion of commendation for exceptional performance in a particular area, should provide the corporate secretary and all trustees with the proposed motions by noon Thursday, February 27, 2025. If there are no exceptions or commendations, then this item will be placed on the consent agenda for the March 11, 2025 board meeting, with the motion that the Board of Trustees approves that the Chief Superintendent is in compliance with the provisions of OE3 instructional program. Today, we have one request for public comment. I would ask our speaker to focus on matters before the board today, to use respectful language, representative of addressing the office of elected officials. Please refrain from using offensive or disrespectful language referring to any person, school, or department, or on the personal character or performance of any individual, student, department, or school in accordance with our board meeting procedures. Laura Shudiak, you're at the podium. Please state your name and any organization that you represent, and you'll be given 3 minutes to address the board.
Thank you, Chair Bolger, trustees. Yes, my name is Laura Shudiak. I represent Youth en Route, which is a Calgary-based charity that empowers youth to pedal their path, both literally and figuratively. This school year to date, we've taught 1,260 special education and typical kids at 13 schools across both the CBE and the CSSD. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today about Operational Expectation 3, specifically Policy 3.4, and the goal to provide safe and reliable transportation services. I'm here to ask you to please work to expand the healthiest, the least expensive, and the most reliable mode of transportation, which is active travel. Data shows that students that choose active travel to get to school have better marks, are happier, and are more connected to their communities. There are 5 requirements. We call them links, and you'll see them in handouts that you will receive after I speak. But there are 5 requirements that kids need before they can choose active transportation. We are actively working on delivering students skills, access to bikes, and expanding the community of students riding bikes. The City of Calgary is busy expanding safe routes. Where we need your help is with secure parking. Traditional school racks are wheel benders. They don't work because you can't get the frame close enough to the rack to actually lock it. The city needs to make upgrades. We have an awesome design that works. Youth also need racks in secure locations, so courtyards, front doors are the best choice inside a school. And how does this relate to transportation services? I've touched on the well-researched health and mental health benefits, but the biggest benefit we see is independence. With a way to get places, kids can choose to work a job, go to music lessons, a fitness class, or just study with friends. From the seat of the bike, they make decisions, interact with others, and build a resilience that does not happen from the back seat of mom or dad's car. At the last board meeting, trustees learned about the drop in high school completion rates across the CBE, and I'm wondering if you have considered how transportation factors into school success for students. Our data tells us that at some students, 18% of students would like to use Calgary Transit, but don't because of the cost. Across the city, 45% of kids tell us that they would use it more often if it were free. When you're relying on Calgary Transit to get to school and it costs $80 a month, that is a barrier for many teens. We've collected surveys that show kids spending over an hour walking to school. Even so-called express buses can take 60 minutes or more. Congestion at schools slows buses, and we can improve bus times by prioritizing transit. And Youth en Route can help students shorten their commute by showing them how to integrate bikes and transit. We think making it easier, cheaper, and faster for kids to get to school will help keep them in school. And Forest Lawn High School is our sort of perfect test scenario. We've moved the needle on biking to school from basically nil to just about 5% in just 3 years. How have we done that? Well, we expanded secure bike parking. It's now inside. We've taught 400 kids cycling skills, and we've delivered over 100 bikes to those kids. And there's more happening in the spring. We think this will translate into making school more accessible, enjoyable, and improve high school completion rates. We look forward to working with the CBE to learn from data and improve school transportation choices for all youth. Did I get in?
Not quite, but we let you go, yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Laura. That concludes the public comment section of today's agenda.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda is the annual monitoring of results to academic success. At the January 14th and 28th, 2025 board meetings, trustees had the opportunity to ask questions regarding the report. The report is now on the agenda for the board to consider whether the Chief Superintendent is making reasonable progress with the provisions of results to academic success. The board has previously approved the reasonable interpretations and indicators of this results policy, which has set the stage for effective monitoring of actual organizational performance. I would like to remind trustees that today our job is to determine whether or not the report provides sufficient evidence that the CB has made reasonable progress towards achieving this result, and to build a portfolio of Chief Superintendent performance in the results half of the Chief Superintendent's job expectations. I would request a trustee bring forward a motion regarding this report. Trustee Vukadinovich.
I move that the Board of Trustees has reviewed the monitoring report for results to academic success and concludes that reasonable progress is being made toward the ultimate achievement of this results policy.
Thank you. Do trustees have any questions about the motion? The motion on the floor is that the Board of Trustees has reviewed the monitoring report for results to academic success and concludes that reasonable progress is being made toward the ultimate achievement of this results policy. Trustee Vukadinovich, would you please open debate?
Trustees, our role today is to see if we have enough evidence and data analysis to determine whether the CBE is making reasonable progress towards the achievement of our academic success results policy. The Results to Academic Success report you see before you reflects our core values and priorities that students come first, learning is our central purpose, and public education serves the common good. Because learning is our central focus, this is one of the most important reports we receive each year as trustees. I wanted to highlight two aspects of this report with which I am particularly pleased. First, I'm heartened to read that high school completion rates continue to increase. And secondly, I'm pleased to read in this report that CBE students continue to outperform the province on both provincial achievement tests and the diploma exams. If I may, I'd like to quote directly from page 67 of 135 of this report, which says that CBE high school students consistently had higher diploma examination results in 2023-24 compared to the provincial results in French language arts, social studies, and all science subjects. The positive gaps were most noticeable at the standard of excellence for Bio 30, Chem 30, and Physics 30, where the CBE students were above the provincial average with a gap of more than 11 percentage points. That's significantly better. And of note, more than 90% of CBE students met the acceptable standard in Physics 30, of whom more than 57% achieved the standard of excellence in the 2023-24 school year. This is wonderful news, and it provides me with the reassurance I need that the CBE provides students in Calgary with a strong academic foundation. There are a number of factors behind why our students achieve such strong results. Of course, we have teachers who are highly qualified and dedicated. We have parents who work closely with schools and guide their students to achieving full potential. But another factor is our commitment to continuous improvement. And this commitment to continuous improvement brings me to another value that we receive when we read this report. This report casts a light on areas where we have success through the Celebrate section that occurs throughout this report. And it also casts a light on areas where we need to improve through the Areas for Growth section that occurs throughout this report. And I see an emphasis on follow-through in this report too because of the content in the recurring section called Building Capacity, through which administration lists next steps to address the areas for growth. So after reading this report, my conclusion is that our students are achieving and we do have a results focus. And for that reason, I encourage you to support today's recommendation, which is also our Chief Superintendent's analysis when it comes to making reasonable progress. I look forward to hearing your debate.
Thank you, Trustee Vukadinovich. Are there any trustees who wish to enter first round of debate? Trustee Close.
Thank you. I will be supporting this motion, and I just want to share my remarks through three different lenses. First, obviously, the results, but also on the focus on strategies and budget assumptions, and then the concept of sustainability. So is CBE as an organization, as a school system, demonstrating reasonable progress in support of academic success? I would say absolutely yes. I'm also confident that our focus is on each and every student experiencing success. So what is the evidence? It is our high school completion rates. especially the all-student cohort achieving higher 4-year and 5-year high school completion rates than the provincial results in 2023-2024. For me, it's also the process of how our school system focuses on the areas of celebration and the areas of improvement where gaps in achievement exist. So, for example, the recognition of, for our K&E students, or knowledge and employability skill courses students, promoting the importance of attending and actually writing the exams, and then the necessary focus on the middle years. So maintaining results to me is noteworthy. We also have an education plan that sets us up for success in these complex times. It is the strategy we need to acknowledge complexity and the change that we're experiencing, and focusing on systemic challenges that need to be addressed in order to achieve academic success. What I also really appreciate about when we review the results report over a couple of meetings is the discussion and the questions and the comments that we have, because it's critical for us to have an understanding of the necessary changes in practice or focus on in order to support our future discussion and deliberation on budget assumptions and allocations. And I was particularly heartened when we had the conversation about the importance of attendance. Even just the small comment around teachers and staff in schools supporting the concept of increased attendance is aligned with student success, and saying, glad that you're here versus where you have been, was profound for me. It grabbed my heart and head, and I know that teachers and staff alike are building connections and understanding of who is in their school, but who needs to be encouraged to stay to contribute to that student success. But the concept of sustainability is huge. We are underfunded, and schools are managing and supporting increased needs and resources for students in a year where we saw the province's rate decline significantly. But we also have to attend to the fact that sustainability has to be top of mind for us. So, and we continue to advocate for an increase in base funding and additional funding for an increase in enrollment so that we can address class size and rising costs. Our advocacy for further funding is not a complaint. I said this last year, it's not an indicator of lack of success. It is our reality and our responsibility to ensure continued progress, continued success for each and every student.
Thank you. Anyone else for round one? Trustee Dennis?
Thank you, Chair. So one could read the results as they are and determine that progress is being made, but the real story is behind the numbers. Reasonable progress, depending on context, could be maintaining results, could see improving results, and depending on context, in some cases, could even see a decline in results. Although we'd all agree that the first two options would be more desirable. So what has our system been managing this monitoring year and in previous years? Ongoing impacts and recovery from a global pandemic, including disruptions to learning and student and staff absenteeism. Piloting draft curriculum, introducing new curriculum, which has also meant adjustments to assessment. New frameworks, 40-year record enrollment growth, student transitions, and balancing space utilization as many of our schools continue to fill up or are already full. But perhaps the most striking is welcoming a surge of students where English is not their first language, now at over 40,000 students. And they come to us with a lower overall language proficiency, meaning that they require additional support for a longer period of time in order to be successful. We heard from administration that the number of students coming to us with an English language proficiency level of 1 to 3 has grown from approximately 13,000 students a few short years ago to over 26,000 students, doubling in a very short period of time. That has and will continue to require a targeted response and increasing investment of resources and expertise. I'm incredibly grateful for the hard work and tenacity of our superintendent's team, other system leaders, staff in schools and classrooms. It is the collective work of all that continues to see CBE students achieving well. But I also, like Trustee Close said, I don't know how sustainable this is. As trustees, we will continue to advocate for funding in support of the students that we serve in the City of Calgary. This organization works hard to be nimble, responsive, and innovative in an environment that continues to shift, but I have every confidence that we will continue to do the good work.
Any trustees for round one? Well, I'll just add that we can be proud and confident in knowing that it's the largest school board in the province, that overall we're exceeding provincial results. Our high school completion rates are in most cases the same or better than that of the province, which is impressive. Our 5-year high school completion rates have increased steadily over the past 3 years. The CB has exceptional standard of excellent results in grade 12 provincial diploma exams, particularly in the sciences, and that physics result, which was remarkable. And the success of our EAL students on both provincial achievement test and diploma exams is exciting. It's commendable that given our current context, and context does matter, that our results have maintained and improved in many areas. In the 23-24 school year, the CB experienced continued and unprecedented month-over-month enrollment growth across all divisions, with thousands of students entering our system throughout the school year. This reality creates instability within classrooms and school environments, as continued school reorganization is required to accommodate and welcome each and every student into the CBE. We saw and continue to see particular growth in our EAL student population. Many of these students are coming to us in middle and high school and have lower language proficiency levels than we've typically seen in the past. So it is not surprising that these students learning English for the first time during the middle school and high school years will require additional time and supports to successfully graduate from high school. Academic success is a result of many factors, many of which are outlined in this report. Building capacity through thoughtful and strategic professional learning, targeting initiatives by division based on focused areas of growth, and having sound structures and processes in place to support our students and teachers are all evident throughout the report. I'm satisfied and will be voting in favor that the CB is making reasonable progress toward results to academic success. We'll move on to round two. Are there any trustees that wish to enter second round of debate? Trustee May.
Thank you. As other trustees have highlighted, there are significant areas of success found within this report. And with an understanding of the ever-increasing classroom complexities and month-over-month continual increases in student enrollment, we have created the conditions to thrive and still produce strong results within our local context as well as provincially. As well, I do see that this report details intentional, continuous focus on supporting our students holistically, as well as developing individual interests to support the successes during and post K-12 education. And I've heard this a theme, but we are monitoring reasonable progress and our context matters. And so educating 1 in 6 students in Alberta is a giant commitment and responsibility each and every day to achieve student progress and successes. And it is important to understand the changes occurring in our student populations and cohorts. And so seeing a continuing trend of students entering the CBE later in educational journeys with lower levels of language proficiencies matters. We also have students adjusting to their new school reality, where their library books are on rolling carts in general areas because their school is so full that the learning commons has become reimagined into a classroom. And so through all this pressure in the system, we are still seeing improved results. And in the very few areas where we only show a slight decrease in results, I would still consider that reasonable progress and encourage others to vote in favor.
Any other trustees wishing to enter second round of debate? Trustee Hack?
A lot of it's been already covered, so I'll try to summarize. I do see reasonable progress being made. It is subjective because we must place it in the context of our rapidly changing world, changes to curriculum, changes to student population, who is attending, where they're attending, and many other contexts outlined by my fellow trustees. But I keep going back to at what cost? At what cost? Because we have a lack of space, a lack of time, we have a lack of finances, and I do think that we are going to start seeing option 3 be our reality, which doesn't mean that we're not making reasonable progress, but it is becoming a reality, and I think we're going to see it in the next few years. Happy with this report, but again, at what cost?
Any other trustees wishing to enter second round? Trustee Vukadinovich, do you wish to close debate?
To start, I would like to thank my fellow trustees for their thoughtful debate and monitoring for reasonable progress on this report. And indeed, the budget does weigh heavily on me too when I think about our future ability to continue to achieve the results, for our students to continue to achieve the results that we expect. But going back to this report, I do think it's an important reminder that in this report, what we're looking at are trends over time. And so as my colleagues have noted around this table, this report notes many successes, but also identifies areas for growth. And this type of continuous monitoring and this dedication to continuous improvement, they're both essential to upholding and building on the reputation that the CBE has as the best school board in Calgary. And from this report, I see evidence that the CBE's chief superintendent is taking continuous monitoring and improvement very seriously. The quality data I see before me comparing CBE results from year to year is crucial for several reasons. First, it can inform us about where resources are most needed, because this type of comparative data analysis can help reveal disparities and needs across different communities or demographics. So it's helpful to us in making budgetary allocations that are economical, efficient, and effective. Secondly, this kind of regular comparative analysis fosters accountability, which is very important to us and the public. And finally, it is a powerful tool for improving educational outcomes, because it helps us understand how distinct factors contribute to student success and helps decision makers like ourselves make informed decisions to enhance the quality of education. So for all of these reasons, it is incredibly important and valuable that we receive this annual report, which provides us with consistent and reliable academic statistics that are comparable over time. So I'm very grateful for the high quality of data gathered and analyzed in this report. And I am even more grateful that this report demonstrates to me that there is a strong focus on academic success at CBE schools. And for this reason, I encourage my colleagues to vote in favor of the motion that I've brought forward.
Thank you very much. I'll call the question. Those in favor of the motion? That is carried unanimously. Our next business deals with the closure of home education program at Windsor Park School for the purpose of relocation. Chief Superintendent Pittman, would you please introduce the report?
Chair Bolger and trustees, you'll recall on December 17th, the Board of 2024, my apologies, the Board of Trustees passed a motion to commence the public input process for the purpose of considering the relocation of the home education program from Windsor Park School to Bel Air School. Today's report speaks to our compliance with legislation and board policy since the board's motion last December. To elaborate further, I'll hand over the introduction to Superintendent Danny Breton.
Chair and Board of Trustees. As a recap of the matter before you today, Bel Air School was returned to the CBE inventory just 9 months ago. Informed by 3 years of record high enrollment growth, an analysis of how to best meet the needs of the student population in this area of the city identified that the relocation of the home education program to Bel Air School, a site that is just a little over 1 kilometer away from where the home education program is currently located, would both allow the home education program to continue to provide the same extent of educational programming currently provided at Windsor Park, while freeing up space for regular program students as close as possible to where student enrollment growth is occurring. thereby setting the stage for CBE administration to undertake a series of community redesignations and a grade configuration change that will eliminate the lottery and overflow currently in place for both Alboya School and Rideau Park School. The Education Act and your own closure of schools procedures set out the formal process that must be followed when closure for relocation of a program is being considered. Under direction provided by you in December, these last few months, the CBE has provided written notice of recommendation of closure, posted notices of the public input meeting, held a public input meeting on January 22nd, and provided verbal and written opportunities for public comment. Accordingly, today, we can confirm that as a result of this work, we have complied with the requirements of the Education Act and of the board policy pertaining to school closures. With this work now complete and with the information now available to the Board of Trustees regarding the recommendation, we are available to answer any questions you may have to support the important decision that is before you.
Trustees, questions or comments on the report? Trustee Vukadinovich.
In terms of trying to understand how we use resources, so what is that dark colored portable like building on the south side of Bel Air School? Is it an actual portable? Does the classroom count for the school include or not include this portable? And if the trustees were to support this recommendation, what could that building be used for?
Through the chair. So that is exactly what it is. The building is 2 modular classrooms that are put together in that location, and they have been included within the total classroom count for the Bel Air School as part of the proposal that's been put forward to you.
Trustee Vukadinovich.
In terms of trying to understand our ability to resource the instructional programming of home education, I'd like to better understand this family room that the home education program families value so much. Is it currently in a classroom at Windsor Park, or is it in some sort of exterior building at Windsor Park School? What kind of room would it be at Bel Air School? And at Bel Air School, would the school community be able to have a dedicated family room, or would it have to be a space that kids and adults share throughout the day for various purposes?
Thank you. Through the chair, the family room at Windsor Park currently is located within the library. So the library is located near the front entrance of the school, and the library has 2 separate sections within a common space. One is dedicated to the family room, and the other is the library. As you would know, the Windsor Park School did not always have this kind of configuration with a family school. That came about as a result of a careful collaboration between the school administration, the teachers, the family, and the students. And so we anticipate if this decision were to be made and home education were to be relocated to Bel Air, that the school would engage in that very same process, collaboration with the staff, with parents, with caregivers, and with students to better understand how to make sure that they feel cared for, welcomed, and a part of the school community.
Trustee Vukadinovich.
So along those lines, in the reports we have before us, we hear from home education parents that a few people are in the information we've received that a few parents are worried that they'll lose the library as a result of this proposed move. That instead of a dedicated library, their library would be converted to a library rolling cart program. So could you help me understand this concern they have? Does it depend on because what you just said is that there will be a lot of engagement. There would be a lot of engagement with families to determine what they would like in the new space. So I just want to hear what the plans are, if any, for the library.
Through the chair. And so previously shared, the footprint of Bel Air School and Windsor Park School are not identical. And so as a result, careful collaboration between school staff and the parent community would need to consider how to best accommodate the use of the library. Staff and parents have consulted, and the current format of the library in Windsor Park is reflective of a continued relationship with parent, with students, with teachers, and has evolved over time to what it currently exists. And that took a dedication of time and conversation and effort with those families and with the staff. That will continue, but it will look different because the footprint at Bel Air School is not identical to that of Windsor Park School. With respect to your question around the rolling cart, we have heard from conversation with individuals who have worked in the previous school program that was offered at the Windsor Park setting that library cart, rolling library cart was an opportunity and an option in that place. That decision has not been made at this time for Bel Air School. It really does require a careful consultation around the footprint of the school, the utilization of the space to best meet the needs of the learners that are attending that program, and that consultation would occur through conversations with our staff, with parents, with caregivers, and with facilities. Thank you.
Trustee Vukadinovic.
In terms of trying to understand our ability to resource our instructional programming, do we know whether the kiln could be moved from Windsor Park School to Bel Air School?
Through the chair. So that is definitely something that could be considered. Having said that, because of how the Windsor Park School and the Bel Air School are so close to each other, it would be the recommendation to keep it on location. Given the infrequent use, it would be just very much simpler and much more cost-effective to move the items to the kiln, use that during that time of the year, and then bring them back to the Bel Air School.
Trustee Vukadinovic.
That's fascinating, yeah. Multiple students can benefit from it. I like that. A question I have is, what process would parents and guardians of the home education have to follow to initiate the school getting a name? So for example, we've got Alice Jameson All-Girls Academy, and that's a program that has a name, and it's inside Stanley Jones School. So I'm wondering what the process would be to get that happening.
Through the chair, and so there is a board process through the name review committee that could be initiated, and so essentially the Board of Trustees at that point in time could turn their minds to naming the program.
Trustee Hack.
Thank you. Page 2-4, the report states that reopening Windsor Park School as a regular program will require $500,000 in IMR funds for ventilation and accessibility upgrades. My question is, given that students are already in the building, would these modifications be necessary if home education students remained? And how do accessibility needs differ between regular local community school and home education?
Through the chair. The modifications would have been necessary irrespective and will be necessary irrespective of your decision, in fact. What happened here is that because of the process to look at those two sites to determine whether or not there might be that ability for us to relocate the program, it was noted that there was a deficiency at the Windsor Park School in terms of having accessible washrooms. And so that is what is being corrected at that school. And with that correction, whether the home education program remains there or whether it is relocated, we will have a building that is accessible.
Trustee Close.
Should this decision be supported, I'm just curious about potential parking and celebration space and the fact that a church is adjacent with a large parking lot that does seem to be empty during most weekdays. Would CBE explore an agreement with the church to offer parking spaces during the weekdays or even rent a presentation space?
Through the chair. Those are certainly things that could be considered. And additionally as well, we know that the students that were previously attending the charter school did have busing. And so there might also be some ability to look at what bus loading is, sort of like no parking signs along the road might exist, and change that as well to maximize the ability for a parental student drop off and pick up.
Trustee Close?
And just to follow up along that line of as far as the parking goes, and just because of previous experience, and I know, you know, the city will often work with the community association to develop a good neighbor agreement. Should this decision be supported, could CBE also reach out to the community association to discuss the changes in what is in the building, but also what could look like for parking?
Through the chair, as part of this proposal, communicating with the community association is definitely part and parcel of the overarching plan once we have confirmation as to what will be happening.
Trustee Vukadinovich?
Is there any consideration for building an addition at Windsor Park School that would create a larger gym? So I'm familiar with schools in the area where gyms of the size that we currently see at Windsor Park School, they've been converted to a learning commons and library and additional classroom space, and then an addition has been built with a modern, larger gym. So would that be contemplated for Windsor Park School? And if so, would it be the CBE or parents through a fundraiser that would be responsible for building the funds, for raising the funds needed to add a gym addition?
Through the chair, that is not a consideration at this time. The focus of both our efforts and our finances are currently dedicated towards relieving the enrollment pressures experienced by CBE schools across the city. And so here, for that school, if and when we do project, we'll get to a place where enrollment pressures will outpace the size. The focus then would be on modular classrooms to absorb that, and again, allow us to continue to focus our efforts and our energies. And I do underscore efforts because of how, notwithstanding, fundraising activities, that does detract from staff being able to support the growth and the challenges that growth is bringing across the system.
Trustees, any other questions or comments on the report? Trustee Vukadinovich?
There are tennis courts at Bel Air School, it appears. So I was curious who owns them, and would home education families be able to use them if the school moved, or are there other potential uses for that type of surface, and who's responsible for maintaining them?
Through the chair. So my understanding is that the tennis courts are managed by the community association and can be booked through those, through the community association. And so certainly a school at that location could enter into whatever agreements they might feel might benefit their students for if that space was required. I'm not 100% certain as to who owns the site or who maintains that, and that's certainly something I could pursue if that's the will of the board. I would say, though, that given the fact that it is managed by the community association, probably belongs to the city ultimately through the different arrangements that the community associations have with the city. And so maintenance, again, either community association and or city likely as part of an answer for that portion of your question.
Trustee Vukadinovich?
And I think this might be my final question. Would out-of-school care be possible at Windsor Park School during the first year of operation, right from the first year of operation as a regular school? And particularly for kindergarten, given that the grade 4 cohort wouldn't necessarily transfer over the first year, so there would be a transitional temporary year that where there would be that extra space.
Through the chair. So based on our past experience opening new schools with programs, before and after school care programs within them right at opening day, we are very confident that we'll be able to find a interested third party and be able to have a program in place for the start of the school year. In regards to whether or not that service provider will be interested for a one-year period to offer a kindergarten program that would provide additional service, that will be up to that service provider to determine based on, again, a sort of a business plan perspective as to what the investment would be versus the return on that investment as to, again, whether they can offer it for that first year.
Seeing no more questions, the board will now consider the approval of the minutes for the January 22nd, 2025 public input meeting. I would request a trustee bring forward a motion regarding the approval of these minutes. Trustee Vukadinovich?
I move that the Board of Trustees approves the minutes of the public input meeting for the relocation of home education held on January 22nd, 2025, provided in attachment 1 to this report.
Thank you. Do trustees have any questions about the motion? The motion on the floor is that the Board of Trustees approves the minutes of the public input meeting for the relocation of home education held on January 22nd, 2025, provided in attachment 1 to this report. I'll call the question. Those in favor of the motion? That is carried unanimously. Trustee Close, would you please provide the board with a synopsis of the public written submissions received by the Board of Trustees in relation to the consideration of closure of the home education program for the purpose of relocation?
Thank you, Chair Bolger. Yes, written submissions were received between December 18th and February 4th, and we received 9 thoughtful, detailed emails. Of the 9 emails, 5 indicated support for the relocation. Of those 5, in support of the relocation, 2 were actually not home education families, but were Windsor Park community members. 2 are current home education families, and 1 was a previous home education family. 4 indicated they did not support the relocation, all of whom are families of the home education program. The themes that we saw in the written submissions included concerned about future needs of a growing CBE home education program and whether the location in Bel Air is sustainable, recommendations related to family involvement in renaming the school, recommendations related to involving families in planning the layout of the school, recommendations related to moving the kiln, replicating separate spaces for a family space, a separate learning commons and a music room, and the need for a stage in the gym. There were concerns about parking. There were concerns about playground equipment for a K-9 age group, and concerns about social emotional connection, belonging, and moving to a new school versus keeping a 20-year-old established program at its location. Concerns also were raised about the unique culture, the library, the family flex space of a successful home education program, and the worry that it will not be replicated.
Thank you, Trustee Close. Is there a trustee who wishes to bring forward a motion regarding this report? Trustee Vukadinovich?
I move that the Board of Trustees approves the closure of the home education program at Windsor Park School for the purpose of relocation, effective June 30, 2025.
Thank you. Do trustees have any questions about the motion? The motion on the floor is that the Board of Trustees approves the closure of the home education program at Windsor Park School for the purpose of relocation, effective June 30th, 2025. Trustee Vukadinovich, would you please open debate?
On December 17th, 2024, administration provided rationale as to why the board should go ahead and commence the public input process to consider the closure of the home education program at Windsor Park for relocation to Bel Air School. And at that December meeting, the Board of Trustees determined that we had been provided with sufficient evidence to indeed start the consideration process as outlined in our governance culture policy, GC3E-2, which spells out the board's closure of schools procedure. The board then held a public input session on January 22nd, 2024, which is when we gathered at Windsor Park School to hear from those affected by the decision before the board, including parents, guardians, and community members. The Board of Trustees also welcomed letters from Calgarians on this decision before us today, and all trustees have been provided with a copy of these letters, and all trustees attended the public input session on January 22nd. We value the thoughts of Calgarians on this matter, and we as trustees now have to weigh the input we received from parents, guardians, and community members with our obligation to the kindergarten to grade 12 CBE education system as a whole. What we have before us is administration's recommendation to close the home education program at Windsor Park for the purpose of relocation to Bel Air School. And it is the job of trustees to give fair consideration both to what we heard from the public input and from CBE's administration with regards to the impact of students on families. This is a huge part of what we have to mull over today because as a K-12 system, we deal with students, and students are affected by this decision. We also have to give fair consideration both to what we heard from the public input and from CBE's administration with regard to proximity, access, and transportation. And we have to give fair consideration to both what we heard from the public and from CBE's administration with regards to balancing student population across schools at a time of record high enrollment growth. We have to give fair consideration to the changes this would spell for students and for their families. And we have to take into consideration whether it is reasonable for students to experience and work through the feelings that could arise from a change that was not expected when they began their education journey in our CBE family of schools. And take into consideration whether the implementation and transition planning demonstrates to families and to Calgarians that the CBE continues to place high value on both programs of choice, such as our amazing home education program, and on programs that serve the local community, such as our amazing regular program neighborhood schools. Just to clarify, what we cannot take into consideration is how administration might choose to use the Windsor Park School, as that is up to administration, but the part within our decision-making is whether to move home education. So I look forward to hearing from my fellow trustees and their opinions on the matter before us today.
Thank you, Trustee Vukadinovich. Are there any trustees who wish to enter first round of debate? Trustee May.
Thank you. I'll share that this is a very difficult decision before us today, and that it's also unusual to have a program with such incredible successes and a great utilization come to us for a closure for the purpose of relocation decision. But ultimately, receiving back the Bel Air leased school location has created opportunities to balance enrollment pressures in neighborhood communities. Windsor Park can now reoffer community school programming in a neighborhood that's experiencing increased student population growth, and the CBE can continue to operate the home education program. It has been heartwarming hearing through the public input meeting as well as the written submissions, the positive impacts, successes, connections, and the critical role that the school offering brings to so many students. The two distinct streams, being the parent-directed program and the shared responsibility program, meet these students' needs and they create the conditions to thrive. So I do see a commitment from the CBE to still honor and support home education, but just reimagined in a new space. I have confidence that transition plans will be intentional and collaborative, including families in creating and opening their new school home. I do ultimately feel that the closure for the purpose of relocation is the best decision that can be made under our current circumstances.
Trustee Dennis.
Thank you, Chair. So I think, I don't think my fellow trustees would disagree that school closure conversations are some of the most difficult that we will ever have sitting around this table. And even though this is a closure for the purpose of relocation, we know that this has an impact and that change can be difficult, and we also know that our communities love their schools. I want to say thank you to everyone who provided written submissions and to the families and community members that participated in the in-person public input meeting. Whether words were shared in support of this decision or expressing concern about the possible change, the comments and questions were thoughtful, respectful, and demonstrated great care and interest in the factors considered in this decision. After considering the viewpoints of community, the information provided by administration, the system need for additional space, and the opportunity that this has provided for us, and the fact that the relocation will indeed see the program continue, I am voting in support of this closure for the purpose of relocation. One of the more significant things that gives me hope in terms of the success of this relocation is the incredible community of parents that are supporting their students, and also the amazing relationship that was demonstrated at that public input meeting between the school administration and the families that program serves. No change can be difficult, but I certainly, if this motion passes today, I certainly wish the school community all the best of luck in this transition, and I have confidence that they're going to make their new home as much loved as their existing one.
Trustee Close.
Thank you. So similarly, I'll discuss context and what I know and what I've heard. I will be supporting the relocation. Context, values that guide my decision-making include students come first, learning is our central purpose, and public education serves the common good. Choice is also a value I hold when it comes to programs because I recognize that learning is influenced by choice and circumstances, but I do hold that value within the value of collective community good. Equity, of course, is a value that needs to be weighed in. It is about fairness and the parameters that keep any competing values in check, and there are always competing values. And in this case, for me, the competing value is the ability to go to school close by to where you live. So what I know and what I've heard, our current system-wide enrollment of 140,000 students and our system utilization rate is extraordinary and unprecedented, and Windsor Park Elementary can be used to reduce the enrollment pressures at other CBE schools. Windsor Park as a community has experienced significant growth in the school-age population and is expected to continue to grow into the future. And this growth, even without a return of inventory and the overflow status of Alboya School, would no doubt prompt a consideration of relocating the CBE home education program so that a regular community program could be offered in Windsor Park. That unexpected return of a school to CBE inventory within an overall geographic area of strong student growth has allowed this. Significantly overutilized schools exist in the same area, and CBE is committed to offering home education. It is a successful program. It is a gem of a program that we are all proud of. CBE wants the move to be stable, but there are concerns about the future needs of a growing CBE home education program and whether the Bel Air location is sustainable, and the important school's unique culture that exists and the concern about how it can be replicated. I really appreciated when one of the parents came up and said parents are devastated and they are adaptable. And I just need to share that that is my experience of when I visit them either at a school council meeting or a celebration of learning. So I will be supporting the relocation for two important reasons. Windsor Park community families have an opportunity for a neighborhood school. It doesn't make sense to put any community students on a bus to a program where they could walk to school. At the same time, we have a gem of a program when it comes to how we support home education families, and they come from all over the city and even from outside the city. And we have the gift of Bel Air School being available. But with eyes wide open, I'm also concerned whether it's a sustainable choice for such a valuable program. I do think we need to find ways to grieve the loss of a very special location, building, and I know CB administration heard the offers and requests for families to be engaged, to participate in this transition, to support families in adapting to the new location. So I will remain hopeful.
Any other trustees for round one? Trustee Hack?
First, really happy to see that CBE has received a small amount of extra space back into our portfolio, although it in no means addresses the massive need that CBE requires to teach students close to home, and that is a value. This extra space does relieve some enrollment pressures locally. I do see that change and a move is disruptive to all involved. I want to underscore that if trustees decide to move the home education program, it would be continuing with the same or similar students, with a continuity of staffing and a 1.3 kilometers from their current location, also knowing that families who choose home education do come from all over the city. This to me is a small distance change. What tips the scales of having to move students for me is knowing that many local students won't have to be bused further away from home if they are in overflow currently. The thought process to site uses to address growing local communities was also taken into consideration. So I feel that when administration brought this forward, all scenarios were thoughtfully considered, and that this was the option to best meet the needs of as many students as possible within the controls that we have. I am in favor of this closure for the purpose of relocation, and I have faith that care will be taken with families during this move should it go ahead.
Thank you. I'll just add in here that as trustees, we heard from home education families that they love their school, the staff, and the tight-knit school community that they're a part of. They're grateful that their children can attend a parent-directed or shared responsibility home education program within the CBE. We heard the importance of making a new school building feel familiar, and that things like artwork and book collections would be important in helping to recreate a positive learning community. We also heard that this proposed closure for relocation would allow for more than 200 of our youngest students to attend school closer to home. The information provided by administration noted a significantly larger student population within the Windsor Park area as compared to Bel Air. Administration also clarified that Windsor Park School has a higher capacity for growth given the availability of space to add modular classrooms, and given projections for enrollment growth in the area, the recommended relocation would provide a higher degree of long-term stability. After hearing the comments and questions and the answers provided by administration at the public engagement session, I'm confident that administration will ensure a comfortable, thoughtful transition to Bel Air School for all students and their families should this motion be passed. We heard from parents about how important this would be, and we heard from administration that they were committed to this. Knowing that the same teachers and staff would be moving alongside their students would seem most significant in managing a smooth transition and setting students up for success in their new location. Other considerations which seemed reasonable are that the home education students live across the entirety of the city and that almost everyone commutes. So as long as the location is central, the Bel Air site is reasonable. The two locations are 1.3 kilometers apart, and the schools are of the same vintage, almost the same size, and have the same number of classrooms. And also to note that all home education students don't necessarily attend school every day. As governors of the Calgary Board of Education, trustees are tasked with making decisions in the best interests of all students and the whole of the organization. We're facing unprecedented enrollment growth and staggering school utilization rates. Over the past 2 years, we have welcomed more than 17,000 additional students to our system, about enough to fill 30 elementary schools. Currently, over 30% of CB schools are operating at 100% utilization or higher. The system utilization rate is 95% and expected to top 100% in the next 2 years, requiring every available student learning space. Considering these factors, in addition to everything we heard throughout the public engagement process, it is a reasonable decision to relocate the home education program from Windsor Park to Bel Air School. And I'm confident the CBE has complied with all the requirements of the ED Act and our board policy throughout the process. Any trustees for round 2 of debate? Trustee Vukadinovich, do you wish to close debate?
I wanted to start off by thanking trustees around the table today for sharing your thoughts and your values and your views. After mulling all factors, I encourage my fellow trustees to vote in favor of this motion for 2 reasons. 2 reasons, I think Trustee Close also mentioned 2 reasons, but 2 reasons it is. First, I can see that the Calgary Board of Education remains committed to offering home education. Students and families come from across Calgary to be part of the CBE's home education community, and I am pleased to see that this community will remain a vital part of the choices available through Calgary's public education system. And I just wanted to add along this note too that I love how Vice Chair Close earlier used the phrase that our programs of choice aren't just programs of choice, but also programs of opportunity. That's a beautiful way to put it, so thank you. Through this process, we've heard over and over how students and families have been positively impacted by the CB's home education program. During debate, Vice Chair Close called it a gem of a program, and indeed it is. I'm looking forward to a bright, strong, and continuing future for our home education program. The second reason I encourage my fellow trustees to vote in favor of this motion is because of the enrollment pressures we are facing in Calgary, which several trustees alluded to in the debate. The overflow and lottery situation we have in Calgary is unfavorable and needs to be urgently addressed. We have 33 CBE schools in overflow, which means that across Calgary we have hundreds of families whose children cannot attend their regular designated school. This is very hard on families because it breaks up cohorts of kids who have been attending school together since kindergarten, because not all kids get through the lotteries for limited spots, and it means kids can't go to the same school as their neighbors. It is incumbent upon the Board of Trustees to consider seriously any recommendation brought to us by administration that has the potential to reduce the need for overflow designations. Because of the severe shortage of school space in Calgary, it would make a huge difference for hundreds of families if we could reopen Windsor Park School as a regular school for community use. This isn't an easy decision by any means because it's impacting families and it's impacting kids. But we are a massively growing city, and the potential of opening up 200 more spaces, especially in an area with a growing population of school-aged children and on a lot with potential for a future addition, is something that for me tips the balance towards supporting the recommendation from administration. And I feel that we as the CB Board of Trustees are doing our part by making hard decisions and being responsible stewards of limited resources. I very much hope that over the next few weeks we will hear our Minister of Education, the Honourable Dimitrios Nicolaitis, announce full funding for all 14 of the capital projects that CBE students need approved this year, because we also need the Government of Alberta's support in resolving the severe space crunch we're in, given that we've grown by over 17,000 students in 3 years. These are extraordinary times where we may need to make difficult decisions about how to accommodate such large influxes of students. So for those reasons, I encourage my colleagues to vote in favor of this motion.
Thank you, Trustee Vukadinovich. I'll call the question. Those in favor of the motion? That is carried unanimously. Next on our agenda is item 8.3, meeting minutes. This item is before the board for decision today instead of being on the consent agenda, as is our normal process, because Trustee Dennis was absent from the December 16th and 17th, 2024 meetings. Pursuant to Section N12 of the board meeting procedures, any trustee who is absent from a Board of Trustees meeting is not entitled to vote on the adoption of the minutes arising from the meeting. As a result, Trustee Dennis will have to abstain from voting on the approval of the December 16th special meeting minutes and the December 17th regular meeting minutes. Is there a trustee who wishes to bring forward a motion regarding the meeting minutes? Trustee Close, thank you.
Thank you. That the Board of Trustees approves the minutes of the special meeting held December 16th, 2024, and the regular meeting held December 17th, 2024.
Do trustees have any questions about the motion? Trustee Vukadinovich?
Am I allowed to bring forward concerns I have about the minutes because they cast aspersions upon Calgarians?
The meetings are not debatable. So the motion on the floor is that the Board of Trustees approve the minutes of the special meeting held December 16th, 2024, and the regular meeting held December 17th, 2024. I'll call the question. Those in favor of the motion? That is Trustee May, Trustee Hack, Trustee Close, and myself. Trustee Vukadinovich is opposed, and Trustee Dennis is abstaining. That is carried. That brings us to the consent agenda of our meeting. There were no items pulled from consent, and as such, all items will be deemed to be approved with the agenda. This concludes the public portion of today's agenda. The board has 2 legal, 2 labor, 2 land, and 4 strategic planning matters to deal with in private. I would like to thank all of you who joined us for the meeting. Our next public board meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, March 4th, 2025.